over. To me, at this point, you fix the existing bridge, and then you have time, because the other bridges are good, you have time to figure out what to do. We've been playing around with this for years and years and years so far, and we need to manage the traffic, not build more for more traffic. And that seems to be what the concept is we're building something for more traffic instead of trying to figure out how to manage what you have. If you want to really manage it, find another way onto the island.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so all the elected officials that would like to speak will do so after Mike Moore and Jared Fralix do their presentation about the options. I'd like to remind the public there was a lot of information in the backup materials also that kind of tells a history, but I think you're going to give us a little bit of a history lesson now too.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair,
You're
Council.
on the clock.
We are here to present essentially what occurred with the SIB, where we are with the project, a brief background, and then discuss some options. And we're also going to, discuss we had a telephone conference with the SIB chairman last week, and essentially what we were told following the SIB decision. But as I mentioned to you all last week, we did get a unanimous decision from the SIB to reject the proposal, which was in the joint resolution that both County Council and the Town of Hilton Head Council passed. And we essentially the board went into executive session, made their decision, came out and essentially explained that the Charleston project had been terminated, and both the York County and the Beaufort County projects had been rejected. And they also discussed their options to come back. And so in our discussion last Thursday, we had the chairman, Mr. John White, as well as our legislative delegation, Senator Davis and Representatives Newton and Herb Kurzman. And the following concerns were cited as concerns for why our proposal was rejected. The revised funding sequence conflicted with the intergovernmental agreement, which specified that SIB funds should be used first, not last. The Town of Hilton Head's contribution was land, right-of-way, and not cash to the project. They also noted that the scaled-back plan that was included in the joint resolution reduced the number of lanes, which had been originally agreed upon, and they did not. And Mr. White indicated that they did not think they would maintain the full $120 million commitment. What that would be, they didn't indicate either. They stated that the county had not clearly outlined a strategy for covering the cost overruns, and they suggested the county bonding capacity of up to $87 million to be pledged. Staff is not going to recommend that. We already had a discussion with you all fall in the field referendum where we discussed not adding any more funding to this project. So what we had going in was our $80 million from the transportation referendum and then the $20 million from impact fee. We also did not have a detailed project timeline for construction. As we know, we discussed having design build approach to that, so we did not have the details that the SIB was looking for. They indicated they were looking for an increased financial commitment from both SCDOT and the county to make up for any reduction of SIB funding. And then lastly, in their view, the IGA had been violated since construction did not commence in 2024. Following this, Jared and myself consulted with Secretary Powell, and he indicated that he would be sending us a letter, which he did send Friday, essentially with 30 days. And just to reiterate, he had asked the SIB to make a fairly quick decision because he presented us in March 31st with a deadline due to the condition of the Mackey Creek span. And so essentially now we're on a 30-day clock until such a time as they will the IGA with DOT will be canceled, and we'll have to develop a new strategy. So with that, we do have one option, and Jared's going to come up and talk through it, but I just want you all to understand The option to which we go back to just the eastbound span is actually option 6 we presented you all back in, I believe, January and February, both the town and the county council, which was just repair of the span. And when we went forward with our proposal, we indicated where all the funding was going to come from, and we received a decision from the SIB. And then secondly, option 2 would be to continue to negotiate an amended IG with the SIB. However, what's left to be discussed is where additional funding would come from. And at this present time, based on council direction, we don't have a sense that there's additional funding to bring to this project. So until we identify an additional funding source, I think any further discussions with the SIB would not yield any benefits there. So that's kind of where we are at this point. I'll invite Jared up. He's got a PowerPoint that will kind of walk through this in more detail, and we can continue discussion after that.
Thank you.
All right, so I just want to take off from where Mike said and talk through really what DOT presented to us back in February. It was February 12th where they presented us options. And I know this is hard to see, so I'll describe it as best as possible. But these were all presentation materials that we had at our joint workshop with the town there at Bookwalter Rec Center in February. And essentially what the spreadsheet is 6 options that they developed and presented to us at that time. The first 2 options were just the bridge. One was bridge with no multi-use pathway, and 2 had a multi-use pathway. Options 3 and 4 were the entirety, and that was just a one-directional bridge. Options 3 and 4 was one-directional bridge and road work for the entire 4 miles. 3 with no multi-use pathway, and 4 with a multi-use pathway. Option 5 was the original proposed 6-lane option, the $490 million option, and option 6 was just the DOT replaced the single span over Mackey Creek. So again, I know it's small on the screen, and I'm going to point back to here where it's a little larger. So for those in the audience, the pointer doesn't work on that screen either. I'm just going to describe it, and you guys trust me that the text there says what I'm going to describe it as. But essentially, the 3-lane bridge, this was the only option in February that fit within the $300 million that we had available at the time, assuming that the SIB was good with our revised proposal. And what it provided for was firstly the replacement of the eastbound Mackey Creek Bridge. It was a 3-lane, DOT called it a lifeline bridge that went all the way from Bluffton to Hilton Head, eastbound traffic only, and we retained the 2 westbound lanes coming backwards. In this iteration at the time, it also considered a U-turn movement, a turnaround movement at Windmill Harbor, turning left onto the side road, the frontage road, and then getting traffic back to Pinckney Island. We had further discussions since then about different options, but in general, that was the option of option 1. That total cost was $272 million, and when you add in the DOT neglected to add in the remaining engineering fee of $15 million, so it brought it to about $285 million. So the next slide, I've got that. The next slide is option 6, and we didn't really spend a lot of time on option 6 because we were hopeful that option 1 was going to be the ticket in February. But what option 6 is just the simple replacement of the Mackey Creek eastbound lane, and what it's doing is this is a twin bridge to the south of the existing span. It is a like-for-like replacement, so 2 lanes today, 2 lanes tomorrow. And that was the conclusion of that option. The 2 lanes, over the life of the project, the cost has grown, and DOT's commitment has grown throughout the life of the project. And that was the additional $16 million that they added. They had done a recent cost estimate just to replace that one span. They had presented us a letter some time ago about the cost to repair was about $50 million, and the cost to reconstruct as is 2 lanes was $90 million. So they went from 75 to 90 with that updated cost estimate. What this does, it ties in on the mainland and ties back in at Pinckney, comes across pretty much the existing boat landing, and then the existing Mackey Creek is demoed out, and we are left with 1 new span and 3 older spans, all of 2 lanes each. So as we talk about today, the different options that Mike just talked about, what we're now calling option 1 is essentially option 6 from February. The biggest difference that we talked about with Secretary Powell is if we move forward with this option 6, option 1 now, his goal would be to continue to plan for the future. So the bridge that we're going to design, whether it's a 1 bridge, whether it's 2 bridge, whatever bridge, has a lifespan of about 75 years. So the current bridges are about 45 years old. So at some point, whether it's the next 10, 20 years, those bridges are going to due for a replacement themselves, the other remaining 3 bridges. And we already know that capacity is an issue today, let alone in 25 years. So his preference and goal would be to not just replace a $90 million like for like, but to add a 3rd lane, to which if Beaufort County would entertain that, then the request from DOT would be to pay for the extra cost from the $90 million 2-lane bridge to a 3-lane. He does not yet have a cost estimate for that, but he wanted to offer that as a potential option if we moved in that direction. So just in summary, what we had as far as funding, this is in February. We had our money, $101 million. DOT increased theirs to $90 million. We had Hilton Head's land dedication of 3.35, and then the State Infrastructure Bank. Out of that, we had expended, that's $315, and out of that, we had already expended $13 million. And if you take the dedication as cash and take that off the balance sheet, we had $298 million to spend. That was what we went to SIB with. So where are we today? Mike just covered it. This is I know it's a lot on the screen, but this is also for public information, so they can have this presentation and review. But this were the comments that we received back in our phone call. On Monday of last week, we did not get any feedback from SIB. It was just a resolute no of the proposal that we sent up to the board. And so we were thankful for the debrief from Chairman White that he did give us a look around to see what the ideas that they had in conflict with our proposal were. So I'm not going to read those. Those are what Mike just described to us all. And then subsequent, we had the meeting with Chairman White and then Secretary Powell, and then here today. And then lastly are the options, just as much for you guys as it is for the public, is just a remuneration of what Mike described as those options. When we did talk about this with Secretary Powell, one thing to mention, and we knew it would be a question, so we went ahead and asked, is if we did option 1, just the single replacement, with or without DOT, if they did it by themselves or if the county added funding to their project, what would that do to traffic? And he said, there will be a burden to traffic because you have an active construction project going on. However, most of the project will be off alignment and will not impact traffic. And when they do have to make the tie-in connections, that work will be done at night. So there will be traffic interruptions definitely at night. But he couldn't say today if there would be any long-term, whether it's a couple days or a couple weeks at a time, long-term interaction that was both night and day. But definitely with any construction of this magnitude, we expect nighttime lane closures. But they would have to do a maintenance of traffic plan to determine if there would be any long-term, like I said, a couple days or a couple weeks of daytime closures. So that is not 100% known at this time. But for the most part, it still would be probably 24 months to 30 months build time, and most of that would be non-obtrusive to daytime peak hour traffic. And then, so if we did this route, it would not include, obviously we would not be affecting any town-owned property, so there would need no Hilton Head right-of-way donation necessary. and then the state infrastructure bank would not be in play either. So that would leave available funding. What we have is $191 million together with DOT's 90. The project cost, as referenced in February, was $88 million, but not included was the money that we've already expended, which is 13. So the total project cost of this span is, for 2 lanes, is $101 million. Again, we've already expended 13, so total out is about $88 million left. And we do not have, like I said, figures yet from Secretary Powell on what the cost of a 3rd lane would be. Just to give you a rough idea, and if you think about that, if 2 lanes cost $100 million, then you can order of magnitude 3 lanes is somewhere between $30 to $50 million. So just using that as a guiding principle. And we'll ask engineers from DOT to give us a fine-tuned number on that. So option 2, as described, is continuing to go with SIB and making a revised proposal to them. And as Mike referenced with Secretary Powell's letter, that although there is no time clock from the SIB, they gave us 60 to 90 days, as with York County, to come back with an alternate proposal if desired. DOT has put a time clock of 30 days for the county. If we can come up with an alternate solution, if option 2 is decided upon, then Secretary Powell said in his letter he would remove that termination notice and continue working on that revised scope. And that's all I have. I just wanted to give some context to what those options look like specifically and technically. And if you have any technical questions, this is about the end of the engineering technical presentation. So the rest of it is for your discussion.
I'm going to open it up for county council to ask any questions. Yes, ma'am?
What about the PSD pipe? Is that not affected here?
Yes, so on the large project, on the 3-lane project, that was one of the things that county or the DOT engineers were working on, and they think they have a possible solution if option 2 is selected to avoid the pipe with some configuration. If we go with option 1, it is in play, but only half of the pipe. So it comes up and kind of changes angle at Pinckney, but half of the pipe would most likely be in conflict.
Any other? Yes, sir. Mr. Passman.
If, in fact, we change to the option whereby we replace the Mackey Bridge as a 2-lane or 3-lane, and the SIB does not give us any money, then we need no IGA. It's us with SCDOT, correct?
The only agreement we would need, so we would terminate our IGA with the SIB. We currently have, it's not referenced as an IGA, but a financial participation agreement with DOT. We would need to retool that agreement, and that would be the only agreement necessary.
And that's the one that he noticed us on.
Yes, that was the one. So the March 7th was the latest supplemental to that financial participation agreement that he referenced the termination clause.
Yes, David?
If we did end up going with option 1 and contributing funds for the 3rd lane, could we go ahead and actually incorporate engineer into their walking path to Pinckney from the mainland?
It could be looked at, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you?
Good. That would, obviously the 80 million from the transportation referendum covers, from Moss Creek to Squire Pope, so that would, take in other funds for that purpose.
If we chose option 1, Mackey Creek, design build, does it still?
No, more than likely, they've got a lot of the information, and there's not a lot of elements to be figured out. So they would most likely proceed with a design bid build traditional delivery method.
So the money, the 80 million, which is now reduced because we've spent some of it, if the pipe has to be moved, that's our expense, right?
No, so it's partially would be our expense. So we have reduced the Utility Relocation Act that the state.
Get some of that.
It's based off the construction value. So now we have a lower construction value. So a lower amount would go towards that relocation. So even though it's say instead of a $20 million relocation, now maybe we're at a $10 million, but instead of having a $300 million project at 4%, you have a $100 million project at 4%. So there still would be a delta that would most likely could be utilized with local funds.
And if we add the third lane, that's out of the 80 million.
Correct.
Okay, so that 80 million's disappearing, possibly.
If that's, now, county council doesn't have to do this. DOT will replace the 2 lanes as is, and there's no money out of the 80 million required. That's just a choice for county council.
Is that option 1 you're talking about?
Option 1, and so the 3 lanes, you can call it 1A. That would be if county council chose to add some of their funds to partner with DOT on that replacement.
What did we spend the 13 million for already?
Engineering, and preliminary engineering and NEPA.
Deepa? Any other questions? Yes, Mark?
Yeah, just again, sitting here listening to everything, and I've heard it all many, many times. So right now, we're at the point where SCDOT will replace 2 lanes with the Mackey Bridge. Whether we do anything or not, that is their plan to do that. If we want to participate, we would need to participate with our 80 million that we've got set aside, minus the 13, obviously, and enhance that bridge if we chose to do that with an agreement with the DOT. And Mike might have explained this, but so back again to the SIB, that they have, again, they didn't terminate us, they rejected us. So I guess this is a question that might go to Senator Davis, but where are we, or what are our chances of that ever coming back with the SIB participating?
On this project or another project?
Any of the bridge projects?
Yeah, that might be a Senator Davis question.
Any other questions for Mr. Moore?
Just one point of clarification, the impact fee could also be used as part of this? just to be
Yes, so we have 21 million in impact fees. We reference as the old impact fee and new impact fees. So these were the ones from 2006. They're only specific, in order to utilize impact fees, it has to be a safety or capacity project, and it has to be on the CIP list in the ordinance from the original impact. 270 is on that. So it can be used on the corridor project, or it can be used on others, but there's a select list of which those funds can be allocated, and project type which those funds can be allocated.
So that would be a choice council could have, is how you wanted to allocate the impact fees, the 21.
21
Could go to
million.
this project, it could go to other projects in the county.
Okay. Any other questions from council? I'd like to invite the Hilton Head elected officials. We had Ms. Patsy signed up first. Would you like to come forward? And if you have questions as part of your, come on up, but you can ask questions too that we might not have, our council might not have thought of.
Ma'am, as an attorney, I feel like I need to ask, may I approach? But Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, council members, first of all, thank you for the opportunity of being here. Thank you for our joint meeting, which we had. I look forward to continuing to work as partners and building bridges together. How about that?
Okay.
Okay, so as you know, access is key for us. It's life-threatening. It's part of our, how do we get on and off the island? It's very key. Also, it's livelihood with workers coming back and forth and serving businesses and for our tourism industry. So it's so important. There's parts of the application, the SIB application, that talk about the economic impact, the regional impact. And I'm glad that you shared that with us, and I hope you look again at that to show how very important this is. There's a number of access questions, some of which Mr. Felix addressed, but I think there's still a lot of detail about how would we get to and from the island during construction, but also how do you get to and from Pinckney Island during construction? And what about if you pick option 1? What happens to that access? What if it's 3 lanes versus 2 lanes there? It's going to be a nightmare at Pinckney Island, it seems like to me. I'm going to have to get my erector set out and try to build that one. And then what happens after merger, just as I was spoken about? The questions about the 80 million, I'm glad you've been asking those, the same questions I had on the list. Where does that $15 million error of SCDOT come out of? Does it come out of the 80 million? You know, I think as the vice chair said, pretty much soon the 80 million is going to be gone. And what do we have after that? I think that's a serious question for us to consider. I think that as a retired attorney, when I was practicing, I was solution focused. But I like to keep my options open, especially for a client. If I'm trying to negotiate, either amend an agreement, negotiate a new one, or renegotiate one. And so if you look at the option 2 of trying to work again with the SIB, there is some time left to do that. And I know Senator Davis is here, and he understands as an attorney what the issues are and how can we address those. And I hope you will listen to his suggestions about how to address that. Don't give up on that yet. Option 1 can be your fallback position. That's always available within that 30-day time period. So look first. I would urge you to look first at option 2. Try that. As both my parents said, don't give up. Keep working until you can find the solution that works. And I would urge you to do that for all of us in the county, especially for the town of Hilton Head. Our lives and our livelihoods depend on the best decision, and don't put it off until tomorrow. Work on it hard today and get it done. We can do it together. We are here to work together with you, but don't leave us with nothing in the money barrel if you pick option 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Tamara, do you want to speak? You signed up. Councilman Tamara.
That's fine. Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to join in y'all's meeting today. This is an important topic, and we've been working on it for 7+ years together. And as we sit here today with the options that we have, I believe option 1 is our best option. The concern I have is how that money, as Councilwoman Tavernick has mentioned, is dwindling away. There's money that needs to be spent on Hilton Head with regard to our corridor and our intersections. I believe if you look at the connecting all of the lights from 95 down to Sea Pines in a systematic way, that will help with the traffic issues that we have. And if you allow those dollars to come back to Hilton Head, we can improve the corridor and the safety issues at our intersections. And that together will solve the congestion and the other concerns that have been arose, and that we are here to address from the beginning. So we've taken out the fluff, we've gotten rid of all the unnecessary pieces of this, and we go back and we return to the idea of reducing congestion and improving safety. Option 1 does that, but we need to reserve those dollars to come back to Hilton Head so we can focus on the problems that we have at the intersections in the corridor. So thank you again, and we look forward to continue to working with you.
Thank you. Any other elected officials from Hilton Head Council? Mayor and we've got
Hello there. Thank you again, Madam Chair and Vice Chair, for having us participate in the meeting today. I think that's a wonderful process and shows the changes that are being made on a positive basis. I'll just get to the point. I'm aligned with option 1. The State Infrastructure Bank made it clear with their unanimous vote that they do not support the county and town's revised proposal for the 278 corridor project. At work, we would call this a rock hunt. And a rock hunt is when somebody tells you to go find a rock, you bring them back a rock and they say, that's rock. That rock's too big. Come back with a smaller rock. And it just is this repetitive process that occurs. And so that's why I think we should move on with option 1. We've already reduced the scope to replacing just the eastbound bridges based on the money we thought we had available. And so since we don't have access to the full $120 million from the SIB and no appetite to borrow money to make up the difference, we have to reduce the scope even further, which means replacing just the deficient bridge. I think it's futile at this point to try to renegotiate with the SIB, so it feels like there is only one option, option 1. The South Carolina DOT, on the other hand, is ready to proceed with replacing the deficient bridge with the caveat that the county pays for the third lane if they so choose. I believe we should focus on working with the South Carolina DOT, laying out the scope of work, the total funds available, and the allocation of expenses between the DOT and the county. And Jared kind of walked us through what those things are. And I think we need to have all that information before you can choose whether to have 2 or 3 lanes so that you can see how much money is being spent. Because to Ms. Tabernak's point, the $80 million is quickly dwindling. So laying out what expenses have been paid, whose allocation of money does that come from? The PSD's move, I saw on the slide with the $88.5 million, it estimated that 4.5% reimbursement would be about $12 million. Given that you only have to move half the pipe, maybe that's enough, I don't know. But if it isn't, who picks up the difference? And at the end of the day, what money is left for corridor work on the island, most specifically through Moss Creek, through Squire Pope Road? We need to maximize the funding of that work so that we can have safety and intersection improvements. But in closing, I want to thank Senator Davis for his unrelenting work to support the County Council, the town of Hilton Head, and its residents on this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Okay.
Good evening.
Greetings.
I join my colleagues in thanking you all for the opportunity. I also want to thank Senator Davis for his work along the way. And my comments are going to be around option 1, but I want to say to Senator Davis, we support you as you continue to work on option 2. I think it is a good position to be in if we are negotiating. Mr. Fralix mentioned that there's going to be discussion around access if we go with option 1 as we tie in the proposed new bridge to the current eastbound. And I would just suggest to you all, if we're going in that direction, that we formalize that. If it's going to be at night, it's going to be at night. No daytime at all. Just disrupting traffic onto Hilton Head is going to affect us all within the county economically if it's not done at the right time. I'd also challenge us to think about an additional agreement. I understand that there will have to be an agreement with SCDOT, but I'd also challenge us to look at an agreement with the town of Hilton Head. You already have made a $13 million investment through the NEPA process. That was not just the bridge. There was a lot of discussion on how we could improve the congestion and safety on Hilton Head as well as we went through that process. So to the point of the $80 million starting to evaporate very quickly here, our joint resolution spoke to a $5 million set aside, particularly for the Stony area and improvements on Hilton Head. So I suggest we keep that in mind. And if we are going to have an agreement, I'd also go a step further and suggest that whatever work happens on Hilton Head, allow the town of Hilton Head to go through the process of master planning that and making it happen. That limits the ideas to just us 7 and not it being 18 with you all being involved, okay? So those are my comments. And again, we thank you all for the opportunity to continue to be involved in this important endeavor.
Thank you very much. One last or more? Just the mayor, okay. You got another elected official, he didn't want to speak?
Yeah, Steve.
No? Okay, everybody said it for you.
But we'll see.
Okay.
So, of course, thank you all, right? And thank you, Senator Davis and Jared and Michael and everybody, because it's been an exercise. We find ourselves really kind of being directed as to what we need to do, what we need to look at. We don't have time to we don't have time to go after additional funding. And we made that statement a while ago. So option 1, I feel is probably the most secure opportunity for us. But I want to touch on the corridor on Hilton Head. We're talking about adding lanes, redoing that, but we wouldn't see any effect from that outside of the bridge being replaced for at least another 25 to 30 years. And what I mean by that is that just replacing the existing bridge doesn't address the traffic issues and the problems that we have through the corridor. We've got to address that corridor now. And while we had set aside $5 million in that joint resolution, we still don't feel that was enough. So we do believe that our fair share of that remaining balance of $80 million does need to make its way back to the island. We've got to address our traffic flow, our safety, and our beautification. And if we can do that, then we can make a real difference on the quality of lives of not only residents, but your residents, our employees, and our guests. So we are behind the 8 ball. I also suggest that if it is a 3-lane bridge that is decided to be built by y'all, that you really push SCDOT to fund it in its entirety. There is a plan that they know, that we've all heard, that they want to do bridges differently going forward. It's got to be in their realm to understand the financing for that. So I don't want to see the 80 million be eaten up by the state when they should be able to take care of it. And if the SIB is able to come back with any additional funding, great. But we can't rely on that. So please, as you think about moving the project forward. All of our communities in the Low Country need this to be done, and done now. But also think about the future value and benefit to Hilton Head through the corridor by having ancillary funds, substantial ancillary funds left over so that we can address our quality of life on the island. Thank you.
Senator Davis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to advocate for either option 1 or option 2. As I've said throughout, that's a policy decision for council to make here and town council to make on Hilton Head. But I do want to give you some facts and some information to help you make that policy decision. Start with what we're talking about turning away. It's not just $120 million from the SIB grant. It's also going to be whatever portion of that $80 million is used by the DOT if you want to go to 3 lanes on the Mackey Creek, okay? DOT is not going to come up with that under this option 1. They will come up with it under the other one. They will pay for it. Not only 3 lanes on Mackey, but 3 lanes all the way across to where it ties in on the island. So let's be clear about what's at stake. Potentially $170 million, okay? The second thing is, and this isn't any fault of Ms. Tunner's, because she wasn't on the phone call, but John White is extremely motivated to make this deal work. He shared that in the phone conversation we had Thursday that you were at, Chair, and Mr. Moore. He followed it up with me in a phone call saying, we want to make this work. Do not think we don't want to make this work. Now, going through the things to make it work, the county overruns. That's being presented, or it looked like it was being presented as a new thing. That was in the original 2021 IGA. There was a Beaufort County obligation to cover cost overruns. That's not new. That's not changed. That's not a new SIB condition. That's existing contractual status. Now, I disagree with Chairman White when he says he wants to have some sort of specific assurance from the county, whether it be a bond or whatever it might be. No other applicant has to provide that specific assurance. It is enough to simply say, as you have in the 2021 IGA, the county is responsible for overruns. You don't have to go into how you're going to handle it 5-6 years from now. I don't think anything you submit back to the SIB should contain anything in regard to bonding capacity. I agree you shouldn't restrict yourself in that regard. In regard to the scope of the project, in talking through with Chairman White and going back to the original SIB application, which in turn defines the project by reference to the application, the approval, the IGA, refers back to the SIB application. It doesn't say a 6-lane bridge. It doesn't say anything. It simply says, and I'll go ahead and cite it. $278 corridor improvement project in Beaufort County includes the consideration of improvements for US 278 corridor from Moss Creek Drive to Spanish Wells Road. And then it talks about replacing the Carl Bowers Bridge, the Mackey Street Bridge, but then it says additional potential improvements include modifications to remaining 3 bridge structures, improved access to Pinckney, improved access to C.H. Haig Junior Boat Ramp. So my point is, you don't even need to talk to the SIB and convince them that this is a substantial material change in scope. You are accomplishing the same objectives that you identified in that original application, and something he acknowledged to me. Now, in terms of the other things, the priority of the money is also spelled out in the IGA. It talks about the county money going hard first, then DOT money, then the SIB money. Don't know why it was submitted differently, but it was. And rightly, the SIB said, wait a minute, we're not going to agree to that, but that's easily fixed. You can go back. It doesn't make any difference to the county whether your money goes in first. If you're going to be responsible on the back end for any overruns, it's immaterial. The second thing I will say is, in regard to the other, quote, objection the SIB had, they wanted the timeline amended. Instead of being 2024 to 2028, we got to modify the timeline. Well, that's implicit in what the county submitted, but he wanted it explicit, that you were requesting a change in the construction timeline. I don't think that's a heavy lift at all. He wanted to be very clear in regard to where money would go if there's savings. Okay, the submission that was given recently and considered by the SIB, the submission by the county, the resolution, called for any savings that weren't used to be used and saved and used in Beaufort County. The IGA says that any savings go back to the SIB. So again, you're not changing it. You were actually asking the SIB to make changes to their IGA that weren't material to what we were asking. There were 2 extra things, and it just made it easier for the SIB to, quote, reject. Now, yes, it was a unanimous vote to reject, but they did that to York, and what's going on with York and what's going on here is what do we now submit to answer these specific concerns. It's not a unanimous rejection. The SIB's made clear doesn't want to send this money. We got to do forward with option 1. That is the fact. He wants to make this work. Moreover, as was said earlier, I can't remember which council member, I think Ms. Bryson said, you've always got the fallback for option 1. If it turns out you can't negotiate with the SIB, if it turns out that these things you submit back isn't something they'll accept, and I think that they will, but if they don't, you're no worse off right now than you are right now. Why go ahead and forestall if you think that's the better option? Now, you may not think it's the better option. You may think it's better just to go with option 1 and be done with the IGA. And if that's your policy decision, that's your policy decision, and you won't hear me criticize it. But don't make that policy decision based on the assumption that you can't get the $120 million from the SIB, because I think you can get it, okay? So I would just spell out also this. In terms of the timeline, there's been a lot of talk about the frustrations, and I had this talk with Secretary Powell, but also Chairman White. This was approved, this grant was approved in 2020, $120 million. Largest grant that we have ever gotten, second largest grant in South Carolina history. A lot of political capital, a lot of time was spent by a lot of people in this room to get that $120 million. I went to every single SIB meeting, every single presentation. I worked the SIB board members. Maybe that's why I feel a little bit proprietary about the $120 million, because it's hard to get, and it's a lot of money. And you add on to that the potential of maybe $50 million coming out of the 80 to pay for the 3 lanes if you want to do the Mackey Creek span. That's $170 million you're essentially sending away, because otherwise the DOT would pay for that three-lane span all the way from Moss Creek to Hilton Head Island. Now, when the plans finally came out, after that grant was made in 2020, they came out with this plan, this massive structure. There's 3 lanes in each direction, breakdown lanes, medians, all in one single structure, and people in Hilton Head freaked out. Quite rightly. They had no idea they were facing something this massive. And so there was a lot of public hearings and a lot of meetings with constituents, a lot of work done with the Gullah community, a lot of work done with the residents, tremendous amount of work over a 2-year period. I got money put into the budget to give to the town of Hilton Head to hire their own consultants, their own engineers, so they could come up with work product that was reflective of what their people wanted and not what SCOD imposed on them. That just took a while. It just takes, and it's supposed to take a while. With something this substantial and this is what I said to John White, over a 2-year period, we went ahead and engaged in a very robust community conversation, hearing from every single constituency and also at Beaufort County. And as a result of that, we came up with a plan But then another shoe dropped. In February of 2024, the DOT said, well, now it's going to cost us $488 million. And so, again, we said, okay, and SIB asked us, and DOT asked us, how are you going to pay for that? That's another $188 million you weren't counting on. So I went up to Columbia again, along with the county, along with the town, and we put forth a presentation. And at that time, it was going to be split. We proposed $90 million from the county, we put $90 million more in, and the SIB putting in $90 million to match it, to cover the overrun of 180. They wanted to know where we're going to get our $90 million. We said we were going to do it in the November 2024 penny sales tax referendum, okay? So that was the plan. That failed, okay? The week after that failed, John White calls me up and says, what's plan B? What are you guys going to do now? I mean, this $90 million that you were going to put up to get another $90 million from the SIB, that's no longer on the table. And I said, well, I got to go, I'll talk to county council. And I came before county council sometime in December, I don't know exactly when, and said, and to my mind, there's only two ways you can get it. You can either get it by raising millage, okay, and generating new income streams, or you can divert existing revenue streams from committed projects toward the bridge. Neither of those two particular options were something that Beaufort County Council wanted to do, and I understand that. And so then what do? Well, then the SIB was ready to just pull the plug entirely. I went up there again at a hearing and got another extension to March 31st of 2025 to come up with a revised proposal. Well, if there's not going to be more money, then the only thing you can do is look at scope. The only thing you can do is look at doing the best you can with the money you have. And that's when dialogue occurred with county council members and town council members. And remarkably, this 2 months ago, there was an 11-0 decision by county council to embrace that, and a 6-1 decision by the town of Hilton Head Council to embrace that. I can't tell you how extraordinarily difficult it is to get individuals who represent diverse constituencies in Beaufort County and in Hilton Head specifically to come up with an 11-0 to 6-1 vote 2 months ago. And so that was the plan that I was then working on trying to put forward. Mr. Moore did an excellent job in making submissions to the SIB, answering questions. So did the town of Hilton Head. The hearing was held last Monday. I didn't know about it. I didn't go. Had I been there, I feel I could have addressed some of these things, which I consider to be fairly non-material in my real estate parlance. Okay, I really do. I don't think adjusting when money goes hard is difficult. I don't think adjusting a construction timeline is difficult. I don't think going back to the IGA agreement in regard to any savings goes to the SIB first is difficult. I don't think there's any question in the original IGA that Beaufort County is in charge of any overage. That's always been the case. I do disagree, as I said earlier. I don't think you need to provide them with specific repayment terms. You don't know where you're going to be 5 years from now or 6 years from now when that amount comes due, if it comes due at all. And let me speak to that. The numbers we're talking about now, we're under it in budget, and that's with what? A 20% contingency that's in there for overruns. So I can't promise anything, but nothing's a certainty in this world. But I think it's important to have all this information and all these facts at your disposal when you address on what course you want to proceed. And so I also agree with Mayor Perry that the master plan on Hilton Head has to be done. If you look at the letters that I submitted when I put forward this modified proposal, I said it's imperative that the town of Hilton Head focus on what that master plan looks like so that we can have that done in conjunction with and maybe concurrently with the improvements that are being done to the bridge, the eastbound span, 3-lane span. And the idea that the only way we can pay for that master plan is by sending back $120 million to the SIB, maybe losing $50 million of the $80 million to pay for the 3-lane Mackey span, and that money is the only money they can have to work on a master plan. That's a flawed premise. There are sources of funds once you identify that, and I've said this, once that master plan is agreed upon, and my God, I don't know if they have agreed upon it. There's differing ideas there. There's people who want overpasses. There's people that want stoplights. There's people that don't want stoplights. There's a lot of work the town has to do to get a community consensus in regard to what that on-island master plan looks like. But once we have that in hand, and once we know what it looks like, we can set our minds to putting the pieces of how to finance that and put it together. And I still think it can be done concurrently with what's being done here with this eastbound span. So I don't mean to, I can't argue about what Mayor Perry says. He's right. We have to do. They're in conjunction with each other. They interact with each other. It doesn't do any good just to expand capacity coming onto the island if you don't handle what the on-island improvements. But I think this is not a mutually exclusive kind of thing. You can do both. I think if you choose option one, you send back $120 million to the SIB, they'll spend it somewhere else in the state. If you want to go to 3 lanes, which I hope that you do, with the Mackey Creek span, if you went that way, that $50 million or 30 to 50, whatever Jared said it was, that's coming out of your $80 million. That ain't going to come out of DOT. DOT will pay for it if it's part of the larger project, 3 lanes all the way from Moss Creek to the island. So those are the facts as I see them. I stand ready to do whatever you, as policymakers in the town, decide you want to do. If you decide you want option one, I will do my best to go to DOT and to get them to cover the cost of that 3 lanes if you want to go that way, so it doesn't eat into that $80 million. I will do whatever I can to mitigate the impacts of that tie-in of just that separate Mackey Creek eastbound span into 278, and I am not as sanguine about the impacts to the town of Hilton Head in that tie-in. Okay, maybe a few weeks or a couple weeks. You know what? I don't want to be in the receiving end when the 2 lanes eastbound to Hilton Head gets shut down for weeks on end, and you've got ingress and egress going on the existing westbound span, okay? That would be a nightmare. It'd be a nightmare politically and economically. And just, intuitively, I'm not an engineer, but if you want to tie in a new span into an existing span while the existing span is operational, there are going to be delays. And Secretary Powell confirmed that to me as well. And he said, we'll do the best we can and work at night, but there may be a couple weeks or so we got to do it during the day. Well, when I hear the or so, that really makes me worried. So, again, if you want to go the route of option one, I understand. You take care of that first span, even leave it 2 lanes, use the money, and if you do go that route, and I'll say this for the mayor, and for the town as well, I do think if you go option one route, that $80 million should go to Hilton Head on island. I realize that there's some debate about whether or not the referendum requires it to go to Hilton Head. But I would say that morally and responsibly, that money does belong there. So if you do go to option one, I'll let you know that I will be advocating on behalf of the town of Hilton Head to try to have that $80 million allocated to their on-island improvements, because I think that's the equitable thing to do given that particular scenario. So with that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to take my seat, or I'm happy to answer any questions. I've tried to stick to the facts as I understand them, recognizing that it's your decision that is going to govern the day.
Okay, I think Tom had his hand up first.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Senator, thank you very much. I think you answered one of them. I was going to ask you, why are you so emphatic that they wouldn't give you more money for the 3rd lane? You said you'd go back and wrestle with them to get that. And I mean, the way you've worked so far over the last 8 years to get the money you have, I don't see that being a problem at all.
Well, I'll try. And as I said with the SIB and with anything in government when it involves an allocation of money, there are no guarantees. There are no sure things. I can give you my best guess based on what I think is reasonable. And I think I can make a reasonable argument as to why that's fair, but I don't want to be standing up here and representing to you that I can get that extra money for the 3rd lane over Mackey if you go to option one from the DOT.
I think it's just like going to option whatever to get the 120. You can't guarantee that either, and I appreciate that. Here's what I want you to go through for me, just to clarify my thoughts on, you said option one, we'd give up $170 million roughly, right?
Well, the assumption I'm making there, Councilman Reitz, is that, of course, it's the $120 million from the SIB. I'm taking Jarrett's numbers of 30 to 50 million of what it might cost to build a 3rd lane if you just do Mackey only, and I'm assuming that I'm going to be unable to get that from the DOT. Okay, if those latter 2 assumptions are incorrect, if it's really 30 million instead of 50 million, okay, then you're only giving back 150 million. Or, in fact, if I can get the DOT or our delegation or all of us collectively persuading the DOT to pay for it, then maybe it's only 120 million you're sending back. But I feel like I need to spell out the worst case scenarios for you, because the decisions you make here tonight could potentially result in $170 million that you're sending back to the state that we currently have in hand.
You know, I appreciate that. The only question I have remaining in that is, let's say we go with option one, and it's just a two-lane. Forget the 50 million. We're talking 100 million that they'd pay for. So you would take 170 minus that 100, you'd be given 70 back. And I think that would give us an awful lot of time.
Giving 70 back where? I'm sorry,
Well, I'm
sorry, I
saying,
didn't follow.
you're talking 170 million we just forego if we went with option one.
If you go option one, the 120 million is gone, right? You understand that?
Yeah, but they're
Okay.
going to put in 100 million toward that bridge.
No, not the SIB, that's the DOT. There's
Well,
two different
I'm saying
entities.
we're going to get that paid for. It's not going to come out
Well,
of
the
our
100
money.
million, the 100 million is independent of the $120 million the SIB is
understand.
paying, right? You understand that? It's
Sure.
DOT's got money, SIB's got money, combined it's about $120 million. That's $220 million. Okay.
All right, I appreciate that. At least we know we're going to have with option one, that two-lane paid for, and the option for three. And I don't see how I think you do very well getting that 50 million for the lane three. Anyway, it just, based on my year and a half in this, there's people here 8 years like you doing this, and I got to tell you, I give you a lot of credit and I appreciate all the effort. But
Let me ask this question.
Sure.
Because really, it boils down to a policy decision. Do you want to do option one or option two? You choose option one, option two is foregone. It's gone. You choose option two and try 30 days to negotiate the thing, and it fails, you still have option one. Why would you, I just pose that question to you. Do you want to throw out one of the options now? Maybe you do if you think option one's the way to go. And if option one's the way you want to go, you ought to make that decision. But if you think option two is the better option, and you're wondering about whether or not the SIB will agree, or you're wondering about this, that, or the other, I guess my response would be you're going to find out in a relatively short amount of time because Secretary Powell's given us 30 days to make that work.
Senator, I appreciate that. And let me make this as clear as I can. The people tell us what we do. It's not what I want to do. It's what I hear from these good people here. And I go back to a Diedrich discussion, what he mentioned, Larry, and we've heard Felice many times. I just wanted on record that I believe this last 7.5 years is a case study of how not to do a project. This has been, we're going at the 11th hour here, not understanding certain things, trying to find out. I remember we were about to sign a joint resolution, and the Island Packet came out with an article that said something or other about not having an option for Pinckney Island. You wrote us a nice letter, and I think you jumped right on it on behalf of the town and said, geez, I believe that's absolutely correct. We've got to have an option for Pinckney Island. Mm-hmm. Here we are about ready to sign a joint resolution, and we're still not sure if we're going to have an option for Pinckney Island or have to go around and do a U-turn at Windmill Harbor. I don't know. I'm just...
Well, and I'll agree with you on one thing. The people are our boss. The people are who we answer to.
Absolutely.
The people are sovereign. But in a representative form of government, the way the people express their voices in a coherent and rational way is to elect each of you to come up there and make decisions on their behalf. I can't go out on the William Hillian Parkway and just start canvassing people as they drive by in cars. That's not going to be a way of doing the will of the people. The only way you do the will of the people is if duly elected people, such as yourselves, inform yourselves of the issues, talk to your constituents, do the best you can to understand the issues, and then cast a decision. That's the voice of the people. And that's where I've been all along with the town of Hilton Head, because I've always said that I thought the Hilton Head was not a party to the agreement with the SIB, but really, to me, they're the main party in interest because it is their entrance to their island. It's impacting their quality of life for generations to come. And so I have always taken the position that I'm going to try not only to hold on to the $120 million as long as I can, but to give the town of Hilton Head the time it needs to come up with a plan or a design that it feels is reflective of what their people want. And I think I've done that. We delayed it for a couple of years. We had independent studies. And then ultimately, the town of Hilton Head Council voted 6-1 in regard to a course forward just 2 months ago. And we're in the middle of that right now. I'm not sure what's happened to make you think that a 6-1 vote of elected officials on town of Hilton Head don't represent the people of Hilton Head. I believe they do. That's the only way I can understand what might be for the best interest of my constituents on Hilton Head is to talk to the people who elected them to do their business.
I appreciate your time.
Ms. Brown?
Senator Davis, I have a question. Why didn't we let the state come in and fix the bridge in 2018? Just come in and fix it.
I think the
Why are we
proposal
here
was,
7 years later?
I think the county council at that time, when DOT put that particular span, the Mackey Creek span, on the watch list, and they came forward and said, we're going to come in and repair this, the county council leaders at that time, and I honestly don't remember who was chair back then in 2018, but they decided to submit an application to say, if you're going to do that first span, why not look at these existing spans, because we have access problems, we have safety problems, we have issues we want to address. They put together their application, they submitted the application, and the SIB made the $120 million grant award. As to the motivations as to why county council decided to make that application, I don't know. But once they decided to make that application, I did the best I could to make sure it succeeded. Okay, and I want to revert to that again. Whatever decision you make here tonight, I'm at peace with, because you represent the people of Beaufort County, either option 1 or option 2. I am here to help you to achieve whatever option it is that you select. And throughout this, that's been my goal, and it remains my goal.
Thank you very much for your answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, Councilman Larson.
Now, if we go back and look at history, in 2018, the county, both north and south, overwhelmingly voted for the $80 million, the 1 cent sales tax, $120 million. So again, it was something that was voted on and approved, and everyone was excited about moving forward. We then experienced delays, COVID, all kind of things. I remember even saying to Jared, we just need to get this thing going. It's like when my kids went off to college, I said, listen, you don't have to get A+, just pass and graduate. But yet we were shooting for this A+ project, and Jared, I said, well, let's do a B project and get this thing done now. He said, well, we're still gonna do an A project. But I say that in the fact that the people have spoken, and they have said, yes, we want this done in 2018, knowing now that we were over budget, and I was very disappointed that our newest referendum did not pass, but I thought it would be overwhelmingly supported by Hilton Head. They were just under 50%, I think, across the board. But here we are, and I agree with you completely. I mean, what harm do we have right now in us pushing forward in the next 30 days to try to get as much as we can, whatever that is, and then fall back to just a 2-lane bridge if we need to.
And that may be where it ends up. That may be where it ends up.
And that might be, exactly. So I appreciate your advice, and I appreciate your thoughts on this. And again, nothing's for certain, but I'm willing to take that risk for us to do whatever we can to try to get the most out of this project, and not go back to the bare bones minimum sour grapes Aesop's fable that you can say, well, gee, the grapes have been sour anyhow. But no, I'm in support of you, and I think that most people in the county would say the same thing.
And I'll say this too about the cost overruns, and the process took 2 years, but the process was a good one. The citizens were engaged, and a lot of that spike in price wasn't just inflation. It was the demand side of the equation got flooded with dollars when the bipartisan infrastructure bill was passed, and billions of dollars came into the demand side, and the supply side was constrained or was scarce, so they could bid up the prices because you had so much money chasing after a few contractors. So this isn't just happening to us here. It's happening in York County. It killed Charleston. Okay, so it's not like, and to Mr. Reed's point, he makes some good points, but I would say that this process is working probably the best way it can work. You take a proposal, which the initial one was horrible. It had this huge monolithic structure. By the way, you're not going to get that anymore with Plan 2, because you're going to have a separate 2-lane span or a 3-lane span, whatever it is, but separate and distinct from the westbound span. So the mass isn't there anymore. There's been movement in that direction. But the process has been working, and that people turned out and talked to their town council members, and they agonized over there in Hilton Head. They weren't just taking their time for the hell of it. I mean, it was hard to do this this Venn diagram and kind of line up, the Gullah community and the residents and those who want tourism and those who worry about safety and try to figure out something that worked. And the fact that you got to an 11-0 county council vote and a 6-1 town council vote just 2 months ago, that's pretty extraordinary. And to give up on it now before you run its course, that's a tough decision for you all to make.
Councilman Cunningham, do you have any comments?
I'm sure. Can you hear me in there?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Mr. Davis, I really just have one question. Sorry I can't be there today. I've been under the weather. Let's say we do continue to push forward and negotiate. My biggest fear has always been us dragging this out and getting more and more difficult when we include more and more people in conversation. And every time we include more people in conversation, you have to have the statement you said that it's a miracle that it came together, that we had 11-0 and 6-1. So my question is, we do this again, we go down that road, how many more people are we going to include to just drag this out longer and longer and longer? At what point do we just say the county and SC and DOT have to make an agreement together and move forward and just realize not everybody's going to be happy? Because we know when we end up not everybody's going to be happy.
I think Secretary Powell has answered that question for us by saying that there needs to be an agreement between the county and the SIB within the next 30 days, or he's exercising the DOT's right to opt out and just do that first span. And I think that is a hard deadline. That's it. As far as next steps go, the ball is in the county's court to respond to the concerns as expressed by Chairman White at that meeting, to resubmit. What I will then assist in doing, along with the governor's office, who's also very committed to making this project happen, by the way, to have the SIB consider that particular revised application by Beaufort County within that 30-day window. Again, no guarantees in life, but I will do everything in my power, as I know Weston Newton and Bill Herb Kurzman and the governor's office and everybody else will, to make sure that whatever is submitted by Beaufort County in terms of a revised submission is taken up by the SIB and a decision is rendered within the time frame that Secretary Powell proposed. That's what I believe.
So then it'd be a fair assumption to say the county council voted today to say we're going to move forward for these 30 days, and it's us 11 figuring this out with you and the state. It's black or white. We're either going in this together, and some people are going to be upset about it, or we're doing opt-in.
Yeah, and in 30 days, if there is not an agreement by the SIB, then I think the DOT has already said it's opted out. It's not going to. It's going to terminate. It's going to go ahead and make plans to do that Mackey span. I think we're down to. It isn't going to go beyond that deadline Secretary Powell has put forth. That's the first time he's done that and said that I terminate this.
I'm surprised they even made it this long.
Yeah.
Madam Chairwoman, I think that's where we're going to have to make that hard decision as a council. We tried our best to work with different groups, the town of Hilton Head, and get all these things done and line all this up, but we either got to make a decision as 11 because our name's on that contract, or we don't. But it's got to be in. I mean, we're going to have to make an ultimate decision in these next 30 days, and there's not going to be that time to go back and forth with Hilton Head and back and forth with this group and that group if we're actually going to get this done. So if we're going to make one last effort at this, then we got to go to the grind, the 11 of us figure this out, get this done, and get it sent back. Get his team to do it. But I don't see any other way. But when we get pulled left and right, that's why this got drug out an extra 2-3 years.
Any other council members having?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just have one last question. Kind of piggybacking off what Logan was talking about, there's not really a lot of negotiating to do. The points you brought up really weren't material. It's just simple amendments to it.
The one I didn't mention because it doesn't fall in your lap is the SIB wants me to go to Secretary Powell and to come up with some more money and allow him to reduce that 120. Doesn't affect your bottom line if I can do that. And I told him I would do that, and I would meet with Secretary Powell. I have no idea, because they've already increased the amount they put toward this project, okay? But I do want to say that is a piece that and whether that's material to the SIB in the final analysis, and whether or not it's got to be something south of 120 or they say no, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think that his repeated assurances to me that I want to see this deal get done. I know how important this is. I'm just frustrated that the process has taken so long. The governor's office wants it to happen. That suggests to me we've got a darn good shot of making this happen.
I agree with you, but kind of once again, we're not going to be going around circulating charrettes or anything like that.
No,
We're
I
not
think it's
changing-
tonight. I think you guys
Yeah.
decide tonight and decide whether you want to make some modifications and submit them in order to give SIB time to look at it, to send it to their members, to set a hearing, to allow the various, constituency groups to weigh in. I think that's what we're talking about here, to your point. I mean, it's probably tonight.
Any other comments? I had a few comments. With all due respect, Senator Davis, I was on the other end of that phone call too.
Mm-hmm.
I did not hear any hope from Chairman White that he wanted to work with us.
I heard it, and then he called me afterwards and repeated it to
It was just a
me.
hard no.
No, it was not a hard no.
As my father would say, it was time to cut bait.
Yep.
And he was a fisherman, and that's the message I received during
Not
that
only
phone
was
call.
it, not only was it the message that I heard in the conference call that we had, he called me afterwards to reassure me that he wanted to make this work. He wanted to make this work. I represent that to you because he told that to me. He knows how much time everybody down here has put into this. Okay? I don't think it's a hard no. But you know what? You'll find out in a few days.
I don't know what we can go back with. I'm looking to our administrator that will, I heard what you said, but I also am looking to our administrator who was also on that call.
We went back with the joint resolution, so anything that would change that, to the point here, we have 28 days now and counting. I think it's going to have to be a unilateral decision by this body. I think you've heard from the town, and I just don't think we have a lot of time to go back and amend this in terms of structuring the joint resolution.
But I would take the position you don't need to amend the joint resolution.
If I may, Senator, the resolution specifies the order of spending. It specified the projects which we work with the town on. So this body would have to change that in the resolution. We would have to go with something other than the joint resolution. I just want to point that out.
Yeah.
Can I just make a point?
Yes, sir.
Everybody's talking about 30 days, but 3 days have gone, so you're at 4 weeks, and you have to give them time to hear it. So unless Senator Davis, when he goes to Secretary Powell to get more money, can convince us to give us more time, you're talking about we have to have this to the SIB within a week to 10 days, so they have time to have their meeting and rule on it. So you're really talking about 10 days, unless the senator can convince Secretary Powell to give us more time because we're making progress.
And Secretary Powell did not offer up any more time.
I agree with you on that, Chair.
Is that something you think you could get?
From Secretary Powell? No. I think that's hard. But I am firm in terms of what Chairman White related in terms of wanting to make this deal work.
We have two options in front of us this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any more discussion?
Logan's got his hand up.
Yes, Councilman Cunningham.
I'll be honest, before coming to this meeting, I was all set on option one district. I'm over kicking this can down the road. But if this is something that we can agree on as 11 of us and not bringing anybody else into this conversation, without changing the funding, just putting our money to the front instead of the back end, which really makes a difference, because I believe we're gonna run over one way or another. At least see what opportunities that gives us. I would be willing to do that, as long as the body in here agrees with us that when that time comes in 20-some days, there's not this meeting between this person, this group, and that group, and we do it all over again. Now, if that's the way it's gonna go, and they're gonna come back to us in 20-some days or 30 days, whatever the number is, and say, okay, now everyone get back together, or we green light, red light. No, it's still 11 of us, or we move on to option one. So if the rest of the council's on board with that and ready to say, okay, this is a contract between us and SCDOT, then let's go. If it's not, and we're gonna bring all these parties in, then I'm out. I mean, it's no disrespect to the other groups, but we've tried it for years, we've worked on it, and I know how much hard work everybody's put into it in all these groups. I was on council, but like Mr. Davis said, we're in the 11th hour. It's put up or shut up right now.
Any other comments? Entertain a motion of any kind?
Yes,
Oh,
I will make the
I
motion.
think Councilman Glover was going to say something. Were you going to say something?
Oh, no, I yield to Mr. Passman motion.
Okay.
I'm going to make a motion that we adopt option number 2. We direct our administration to make the necessary changes in the IGA with the SIB to move this project to its culmination as soon as possible.
I will second that motion.
We have a second by Councilman Cunningham. Discussion? Any
I
comments?
would just hope with Joe's motion that he's on the same page as me from what I stated, if this comes back to us.
Just keep in mind, this will be less than 10 days to get this back to the SIB.
Action from
Just
us.
more time I get to spend with you guys.
I think you'd be looking for action from us to bring to council at Tuesday night's meeting, the Tuesday after Memorial Day.
To bring a council meeting on Tuesday after Memorial Day with a new resolution or new agreement.
Resolution and the proposed amendments to the IGA.
Would you like to amend your motion to say that, Councilman Passament?
In there, as far as he's given direction to staff.
All right.
I think the resolution also needs to be amended.
Chairwoman,
We would come in with a single resolution is what we would do. The joint backup as far as what occurred before, we'd have a new single resolution from the county and the proposed amendments to the IGA.
Do we need that as part of the motion or just,
I think it's encompassed within.
it's covered in there?
Councilman said.
Okay, any discussion or comments?
Just one quick question.
Yes.
Senator Davis, would that give us enough time for you and the SIB? Going to be,
Next Tuesday, they're going to bring all of the documentation necessary to go to the SIB.
Is it 21 days?
I can alert the SIB and tell them this is actually.
okay, thank you.
Wait, any other discussion? We're going to do a roll call vote? Oh, we'll do by show of hands.
No, I think you should do a roll call.
What's that?
Let's do a roll call.
Okay, we're going to do a roll call, please. All right, everyone heard the motion by Councilman Passament. It was seconded by Councilman Cunningham, and Ms. Brock will do a roll call. So if you vote yes, you're voting in favor of option 2.
Councilmember Passament?
Yes.
Councilmember Cunningham?
Yes.
Councilmember Reeds?
no.
Councilmember McGowan? Councilmember Glover?
Yes.
Councilmember Bartholomew?
Yes.
Councilmember Lawson?
Mark Lawson, yes.
Councilmember Dawson?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
No.
Vice Chair Tabernick?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
No.
The motion passes 8-3.
Okay, is there any other further business we need to discuss tonight regarding this? The motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Joe,
Thank you.
quick question.
So he's going to have Tuesday the data. Senator Davis is going to have information Tuesday. It's going to go down.
Not y'all's fault. I just,
I can't get over there fast enough.
Yes. I do.
do you want to get together tomorrow or Wednesday or whatever is good for you? Is good for me.
Because
Those aren't your sunglasses, are they?
did you lose? Are they? Logan, did you lose sunglasses?
Might have been Logan's then. Logan was sitting there earlier.
Last night.
With,